What if I told you that this is the most powerful move in Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy? In today's video, we'll be looking into one of the most game-breaking bugs in the entire game. Often referred to as the idle deload, this bug allows the player to load in a previously visited level anytime they want, and all it takes is 30 seconds of holding down a single button while standing still. Let's jump in and see what exactly is causing this to happen. Although very easy to execute, this bug has a lot of technical nonsense going on in the background, so I hope you're ready to get a little technical. To start, we'll need to know what a load state is, or at least in this game. In Jak and Daxter, a load state is, well, exactly what it sounds like, a state that can be loaded. Load states contain information about active levels, visibility data, and a list of object names and statuses. When certain events occur, such as a cutscene, using a warp gate, dying, or an idle animation, a backup load state is created of Jak's current whereabouts. This means Jak's current level data, visibility data, and level objects are backed up and stored. The game does this because during cutscenes, certain objects or characters need to be moved around or deloaded as the cutscene plays out. After the cutscene is over, the game needs to be able to return all the characters and objects to their original positions before the cutscene was started. The game refers to the backup load state that was created right before the cutscene was initiated and uses that data to return everything back to its original position. To visualize this, we'll use the Flut Egg cutscene in Sentinel Beach. With a FreeCam tool, we can see how the characters and objects are moved around to be either in or out of the frame during the cutscene. After the cutscene is finished, you'll notice that the egg moves back to its original position. What we're seeing is the backup load state being loaded back in and the game returning objects to the positions that they were at before the cutscene even started. Now then, what does this have to do with the idle deload bug? Watching a cutscene is just one of the 4 events that can cause the game to create a new backup load state. We covered the other 3 events earlier: dying, using a warp gate, and performing an idle animation. All 4 of these events share the same animation system that loads in sounds and animations depending on the event that's occurring. If Jak uses a warp gate, this animation system loads in the animations and sounds needed for the warp gate. If Jak starts a cutscene, the system loads in animations and sounds needed for that particular cutscene. Out of these 4 events, cutscenes are the only ones that really need to create a backup load state because of how they move and deload objects and characters. Since the other 3 events share the same animation system used by cutscenes, the backup load state is created even if it's not necessary. In other words, idle animations can create backup load states. Next, let's investigate how Jak's idle animation uses the shared animation system. There are 2 sets of functions we want to pay attention to in the animation system when Jak's idle animation is triggered. The first set of functions, that we'll call function set 1, contains the functions JA_PlaySpooledAnim and backup load state and set CMDS. The PlaySpooledAnim function loads in the sound and animation data needed for Jak's idle animation. Along with that, it also calls another function called backup load state and set CMDS. This second function creates and stores a backup load state containing Jak's current level, visibility, and object information. Once the idle animation is finished or interrupted with a controller input, the second set of functions, or function set 2, is triggered, which consists of JA_AbortSpooledAnim and restore load state and cleanup. JA_AbortSpooledAnim stops the sounds and animations for the idle deload. It also calls another function called restore load state and cleanup. This restore function loads in the backup load state. This is the function that returns the egg and other objects to their original positions as seen before. So in short, the game creates a backup state, plays the idle animation sequence, then loads in the backup to restore everything back to normal. Now, what if I told you there is a single frame of oversight that allows the player to skip the backup creation segment and only trigger the abort and restore functions. Well, that is exactly what happens with an idle deload. There is one frame in the beginning of an idle animation where the player can press one of these buttons and completely skip function set 1, and only execute function set 2. This means the game won't update the backup load state and instead will load whatever backup load state it has stored at that given moment. Now, let's perform all of this in-game. By having Jak die in Sentinel Beach, this counts as one of the 4 events that updates our backup load state. This means that the backup load state has now been updated to contain the level, visibility, and object data of Sentinel Beach. Now let's go to Forbidden Jungle and see what happens if we interrupt the backup load state sequence. We can see that the circle button is one of the inputs that can interrupt the backup sequence, so we'll use that. By holding circle, the game registers a circle input on every frame. There is a lot of program logic to prevent Jak from spin kicking on every frame, so while it may not look like it, the game is indeed registering a circle input on every frame. While holding circle, we hold still for 30 seconds, since this is how long it takes for Jak's idle animation to commence. At the 30-second mark, the backup sequence is interrupted by us holding the circle button. This has skipped the functions that tell the game to update the backup load state to Forbidden Jungle, and instead, we skip straight to the abort and restore functions, which when executed, will load the previously stored Sentinel Beach backup we made earlier by dying in Sentinel Beach. The game then loads in Sentinel Beach and deloads Forbidden Jungle, since Forbidden Jungle was not in the backup load state data. Since the level we're in just deloaded, we have nothing to stand on and fall into the void. After dying, Jak respawns in the level that was just loaded from the backup load state, which in this case is Sentinel Beach. Now, Sentinel Beach only has one checkpoint, so the game put us there. But if the level has more than one checkpoint, how does the game know which one to spawn Jak at? Is it the first, middle, end? Well, the developers programmed in some logic to spawn Jak at the checkpoint closest to the XYZ coordinates of where he died in-game. Combining this checkpoint spawn logic with the idle deload allows speedrunners to bypass the 72 power cell requirement in LavaTube. By navigating on foot, speedrunners get to a point in LavaTube where Jak can perform an idle deload and have his checkpoint set to the one that spawns him on the zoomer. Now it's time for a test. Let's say that I am at the final boss fight, but I forgot to collect some precursor orbs in Sandover Village. I do an idle animation during the boss fight, then backtrack all the way to Sandover Village without dying. I then collect the orbs I was missing, then hold circle and hold still for 30 seconds. Where will I end up once Jak does an idle deload? If you guessed the final boss level, you're right. If set up correctly, you can easily use the idle deload to get from the very beginning of the game to the very end. I want to give a huge thank you to Water111, the lead developer on the OpenGOAL project, for helping me break down how this trick works at the code level. I wouldn't have been able to make this video without their help. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Like the video if you liked what you saw and subscribe for more content like this. I hope you were able to keep up with all that technical, stupid jargon, but if not, I guess just try watching the video again.